Welcome to Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. Jacalyn. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. Jacalyn at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, and yes, it's true. I'm in. Here I am. I'm in USA Global TV and radio. I'm so excited to be here with you. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and our show today is The Corner Bookstore, and we interview the most interesting, fascinating people here. To help me is my co-host and friend. Her name is DIANN BOEHM. She is a true legend herself across the world. She has lived so many places and met so many people. She has a vast and wide network, and she is always willing to help someone. She is the international award-winning children's and young adults book author, and she has talent from here till the end of the world. Let's welcome her to the program. Hello, DIANN.
Hi, it's great to see you. I always feel so good when you introduce me. I'm like, what?
I could just do a whole show introducing you. So it's great to have you here. And as you may know, we have people who are joining us for the first time. We have a new radio platform, TuneIn Radio. And I want to make sure that everybody gets to know who you are. So could you please share your connection to books and writing and why it's so important to you?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Yes, I have always been a storyteller, and whether it was on stage or verbally telling stories and a classroom teacher, and I decided to take my stories that I said verbally and put them to print. And that's very important to me because my stories are all about hope, inspiration, loving one another, and trying to help bring peace on earth. And so if you love yourself, it is easier to love others. And that's what I'm all about. And so traveling and being blessed with being in different parts of the world, I try to spread happiness. Thank you, Dr. Jacalyn.
You absolutely do that. And I just want our audience to know that you are on several shows here, another one to come. And you also have your own show here, which is your Talking Head series. Do you want to share a little bit about that? And then we'll bring out our guest.
Sure, I'll be happy to. So I'm very proud to be on one of Dr. Jacalyn's Talking Heads shows. Dr. Jacalyn has just some incredible, just amazing leaders in Talking Heads to share things with you. And I'm honored to be able to do a Talking Heads. And mine is predominantly about storytelling and how you can be a storyteller too. So I do hope you'll check into those classes on story writing. And I'll be also adding more classes and ideas that you can do to fall in love with vocabulary and words and even make your stories more brilliant. Thank you, Dr. Jacalyn.
Thank you, DIANN. And our guest today was actually watching one of our shows where Mickey was here, and he also works with Mickey. So thank you, Mickey Mickelson, for the beautiful
we love him.
So without further ado, joining us from Houston, Texas is Pat Daly, author of Spark. Let's find out what he's up to and what he's written. Welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks, Dr. Jacalyn and DIANN. Thanks for having me here.
You're welcome.
It's nice to have you here. So we were just doing a little cheerleading for Mickey. And for people who aren't aware of who he is, can you share with us a little bit about how you work with him and how that brought you here today?
Absolutely. Mickey Mickelson is possibly the world's best publicist. I got introduced to him from my publisher, Inklings Publishing, when that company decided we needed to step up our game a little bit in terms of getting our individual branding as authors out there, about branding for the books, and about getting a larger platform. So I was a little skeptical at first. I don't know, maybe it's just me, or maybe other people have this hesitancy when they think about things like agents and publicists. Uh, but Mickey has been phenomenal. It is a pleasure to work with him, and he's almost too good. He gets you into a lot of things that the doors would have been closed before, but he's very good at what he does, and I'm very happy to be working with him.
That's for sure. He is good.
Indeed.
So, Pat, I'd love to have you share with our audience about the work that you've created and put out into the world, and why it's important to you to be an author.
Sure. The book is called Spark, and it's a near future science fiction novel that I came across the idea actually because my daughters, I've got two daughters, and for a while they were both playing a game called Pokemon Go. And in it, you have your phone up in front of you, and you're out in the real world, wandering around in a park, chasing these little virtual Pokemon that appear in front of you. And I was walking the dogs one morning thinking about this, and I thought, how cool would it be if we could have a Disney scale theme park where the virtual could be superimposed over reality, so you'd actually see all the people you were with. You wouldn't have to worry about walking into a fountain that you didn't notice. You wouldn't have to worry about, hitting a wall you didn't know was there. You'd see everything that was real and everything that was virtual at the same time. And so that got me thinking about what that would be like. And so I started writing the book, and a couple of years later, Spark emerged and was published, and it's been a lot of fun. I've found that I enjoy the fiction writing far more than I thought I would.
You do seem excited about it, and you've got this kind of this, I hate to use it, but childlike essence to you. Don't you feel that way, Diann?
Absolutely.
Like playful, youthful.
Well, that's good to hear. I do feel like I'm kind of a kid stuck in a grown-up's body. A bit of that imposter syndrome going on, where it's like, I can't really believe I'm getting paid to do something.
But isn't that fun that we can take our imagination and become that child again, and then you see young people embrace what you've written?
Absolutely. And Diann, it's like what you said in your intro, talking about wanting there to be hope and uplifting aspects of the things you do, both writing and in life. And that's a philosophy that I adhere to myself.
Great to know. So in your books, can you describe like what happens when kids read them, or
Sure.
the illustrations?
Sure. It's the book starts with a young man who is, through a series of unfortunate circumstances, ends up being orphaned and living in the foster care system. Now he had a great life up until about age 10, and then the world just crumbled around him. And so he has this unfortunate event with his foster mom when she becomes convinced that he's actually going to try to kill them all in their sleep. Not at all his intention, by the way. And so he ends up running away from foster care. And as he runs, he decides to go to the last place he remembered being happy, which happened to be the vacation he took with his parents to Spark, which stands for Solar Prime Augmented Reality Park. So he ends up there. He ends up having a very early and unpleasant encounter with a young woman named Shakri Patel. In the park, everybody goes by their avatar names. So her avatar name is Feral Daughter. And he has this unfortunate encounter with her and leaves the park feeling dejected, doesn't know what he did wrong. But he overcomes that hesitance, comes back, and he decides he's going to try to figure out a way to live inside the park. And as he does it, he re-encounters feral daughter, and a little romance blossoms, but not without a lot of, I like to say they butt heads and hold hands. They've got a lot of disagreements about the way life should be approached and the way the park should be approached, and yet they end up growing very fond of each other, and romance blossoms.
Fascinating. Sorry, Diane.
It is fascinating. I know. Just like, I was like, while you were talking, I'm like, I got to find this on Amazon, so I know which nephews to buy, or any of the nieces to buy this for. I'm going to buy it for myself.
Yeah.
I'd love to know, Pat, did you already have knowledge of the foster care system, or did you have to research that?
I did. I had knowledge of the foster care system, although to represent it accurately, I ended up doing a lot more research than I had anticipated in that aspect of the novel. And I got to say, the goal of the foster system is always noble, always hopeful. Unfortunately, both the people that work in the foster system, people that work for Child Protective Services, they are grossly understaffed. And so most of the time, things work out well. The kids in foster care end up with a loving family that's willing to help them. But let's face it, they wouldn't be in foster care if something bad hadn't happened to them, whether it's death of their family, or they ended up being runaways, or a whole host of different things. For whatever reason, they end up living on the street, they get brought into the system. And so, unfortunately, sometimes kids fall through the cracks, even in the system. And not everybody fits into a foster family. So you end up sometimes having children that have to live in group homes. And group homes are, again, well-intentioned, but often not as gentle with a young person as we would hope them to be.
Interesting.
Yeah, really interesting. And I'm wondering, in these scenarios, do children have access to books, to reading?
A lot of that is going to depend on the foster family. Most foster families do have access to books, and generally have no inhibitions about letting their foster kids read, or checking out books from the library. So generally, they've got access to a lot of reading. Now, not everybody reads as much as an author I would like them to. A lot more people are into gaming, or watching things online, watching TV. And so I think we see more and more that the tendency is towards video entertainment as opposed to just the written word.
That is so true. And we're finding that in schools as well, because the kids' attention span, because there's so much out there that's visual, that it makes it kind of tough. Which takes me back to the question that, what is the reading level of Spark? Do you know?
The reading level of Spark, it's aimed at young adults. But what does that really mean? It means that my wife's a fourth grade teacher, and she says that occasionally I trot out a vocabulary stretching word, but for the most part, it's aimed at a 4th to 6th grade reading level.
Okay, that's
which
perfect.
I find kind of bizarre that overwhelmingly my readers are adults. And so it's, I don't think you have to write like a Neil Stevenson, where, even somebody my age has to have a dictionary next to the bed to whip it open to find out what the heck he means by this word or that word. I think you can find entertainment and enlightenment even with sometimes simpler vocabulary.
No, absolutely. And that's the key, Dr. Jacalyn, too, is, that vocabulary I know I'm working on one story, and I'm going ahead and putting some vocabulary in the back just so that they have it, because I want kids and young adults to enrich. But what I love about your book is that I love the fact that adults are reading it too, because I'm such a believer that books are for all ages. But I can already see a young kids pre-K and kinder just having a tour of Spark. I think it would be so much fun. I want a tour of Spark. Don't you, Dr. Jacalyn? I want to.
Definitely. And I have a question for both of you. As Diane knows, I'm working on a children's book series, and I've never written a children's book series. And when you're writing for children, also adults are reading it, obviously, right? They're usually reading it to the kiddos. So what level do you actually write it for? Do you write it for the adult who's reading, or you write it for the child who's learning to read?
I'll let you answer first, Pat.
Okay. I think I wrote it for myself first, and thought about, like I said, I'm still a kid trapped in an adult's body. So what would I like? What would keep me entertained? And so I wrote it from that perspective first. And then as I went through revisions, I took out themes that might have been a little too adult, because I wanted this to be a family-friendly book. As my wife said, I want this to be a book that she can have in her classroom and nobody's going to be upset about that. So, and I think you don't have to have adult themes, or you can have adult themes, but you don't have to have explicit scenes. So generally, I'd say write for yourself first. Then when you're doing your revisions, think more about your audience and edit it appropriately. What about you, Diane?
That was great. I'm very similar to you. Something comes to me, and then it's the editing process. I might have to bring it back down. But I think your book is probably very much like I like to say, layering. So how a child is going to read the book is going to be different in how an adult. And so we have this layering level that makes everybody happy.
Absolutely. That's a great way to put it, because there are things that the young adult reading it's going to go right over their head, and and that's fine. But the adult reading it will go, oh, I see what they're doing here. And so I think that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if I understood correctly in Spark, what's so cool about yours is different is that the child enters a virtual reality, but it's within their own virtual reality, correct?
No, you're actually in a big theme park.
Okay.
But what you see through your virtual reality
glasses.
Yeah, I call it augmented reality glasses, because it blends what's real and what's artificial. So you're seeing generally the same things as everyone else. And I have an adults only area that I talk about briefly in the book, where you got to be 18 or better to go in there, and maybe you see things that you wouldn't want your average fourth grader seeing.
Like parents in the mud bath.
There you go. Absolutely.
They have fun too,
Yeah.
So we actually can. That's great. I love it.
We're going to take a quick break, and we're actually going to be playing a new sponsorship that I worked on last night for 5 hours. So let's take a look at this. And this particular trailer will be changing to include different people. Diane will be in a future version. So let's take a look, and then we'll be right back. Hello, my name is Jacalyn Kerbeck. I'm known professionally as Dr. Jacalyn. I am the founder and president of USA Global TV and Radio, and I also am known as the listening mentor. I teach people to listen at an elevated level. The power of listening is an opportunity for people to watch role plays. When we watch these role plays, many times we can see ourselves in the role play. I teach people how to set boundaries as an elevated listener. And when we're listening at an elevated level, we're listening without judging the other person. My goal, my wish, my mission is for us to respect each other, hold again that safe space for people to share their comments, their feelings, so it doesn't escalate. It's not years of being unheard. I'm asking you to open your heart, open your mind, and open your ears to support a world of inner peace and elevated listening. Thank you for your time today.
Hi, my name is Al Seeding. I facilitate a process called brand and culture alignment that builds teams around their purpose. And the result of it is teams of people that are highly engaged and highly energized, that work hard, that are very innovative and creative and take the initiative and make things happen. That's what I do for a living. Prior to that, I was a project manager for a number of large companies. And I used to think I was a pretty good listener. I mean, a big part of managing a project is listening to the people on the project, and especially listening to the people that the project serves. And I became pretty good at listening logically to what people had to say. But what I wasn't very good at, and I didn't realize that until I took Dr. Jacalyn's listening program, what I didn't realize is that you really need to learn how to listen emotionally and empathetically. And the power of listening for me was a game changer, because I learned how to listen to people express themselves and their feelings, and not just what they were thinking. And I also learned something I never had before, which is the patience to listen to people fully and completely until they're finished expressing what they have in mind. So I highly recommend Dr. Jacalyn's program. It's terrific, it's very effective, and it made a difference for me in my personal life and in my professional life both. And I think it's something everybody ought to consider.
And welcome back to USA Global TV and Radio. Our show is The Corner Bookstore. And whether you're joining us live or on the replay, or you're watching us on TV or listening on the radio, we're just happy to have you here. Let's get back to the show and welcome DIANN, FLOYD, my co-hosts and friends. Hello, welcome.
Glad to be back.
Glad to have you. And joining us from the great state of Texas, we've got Pat Daly, author. Welcome back, Pat.
Thanks. Glad to be back.
Well, it's very exciting when we get to explore a new work written by someone. And Pat, I'd love for you to share with our audience. Let's say you're a child or you're an adult. What are some 2 or 3 takeaways from the book that you'd really like people to have?
I think number one would be that even in the darkest times, you can find things that are hopeful and uplifting. And then along with that, it's that you're always better in groups. We often think that we're isolated, it's just us, but if you find that person that resonates with you, you're much better facing the world holding hands than you are facing it alone. You have somebody you can talk to and listen to and just understand. And I think that those are the two biggies.
That's beautiful. And I have to say, if two married people and I'm single, excuse me, I just said to myself, honestly, today I said, well, I guess love is evasive, elusive, and I'm just happy. I'll just happy being by myself the rest of my life. And yet I hear you, Pat, and I know how happy Diann is. And I guess that's not really the case.
Oh, just depends, I guess. I feel blessed. I feel very lucky. I tell them all the time, very lucky. So,
as do I. But that other being doesn't have to be a person.
That's
I think a lady named Carol Novello wrote a great book called Mutual Rescue, and it's about the power of people and animals to rescue each other. And it's what I loved about it. It's also backed up by science. It's not just all the feels of the story. It's also the science behind what people are feeling and how we feel when we're paired up with animals as well.
Great point. Thank you.
Great point.
Pat, are you interested in reading from your book?
Sure.
That would be great. I would love to hear some of this. You weren't ready for that.
Took me by surprise.
That'd be so awesome.
Yeah,
do you have it right by you?
I have one behind me here. Hang on.
Oh, that'd be great. Okay. And while you're doing that, I want to make sure, Dr. Jacalyn, we talk to him, because in some schools we have a program called Spark, but it would be fun to see, Pat, if you're interested in taking what you've written and actually, because I was a former classroom teacher, so I think curriculum all the time. And since your wife's a fourth grade teacher, I know she can relate to this, but I can already see so many lovely ways to learn from this book. So,
yeah, I'd be more than happy to participate.
No, you get to do it. You and your wife. Okay.
All right. I hadn't really planned this out, so I'm just going to start chapter 1. And how long do you want me to go? I mean,
how about 5 minutes? How would that be?
Okay, that's perfect.
All right.
All right, chapter 1, 183 days to the attack. Run first. You can figure out that stuff about, are you running towards something or away from something later. If you wait, you may not be able to run at all. Name withheld, # fleeing foster care. They came for him at night, in his sleep. They always did. The dream started happy. Will played catch with his dad in the front yard of the old house. A beautiful spring day in Houston. Then, without transition, it became dark, and he was in the house. He stumbled over layers of trash. His foot slipped on an old pizza box, and he fell. He tried to recoil from the familiar fetid smell of spoiled food and cat urine. He couldn't move. "Mom? Mom!" he called. No answer but for the noise coming from the walls. A skittering, scratching sound that stopped and started, but always drew closer. His arms and legs didn't work, but he managed to roll over onto his stomach and began to inch worm-like toward the kitchen. He had to make it to the kitchen. A million miles of worming through newspapers that had once been neatly stacked, but toppled, cascading old headlines across the room. Milk cartons meant for recycling that never made it out the door, their caps coming off and the last few drops slowly congealing and adding to the general stench of the house. If he could just make it to the kitchen, he could get a butcher knife to protect himself. He butted aside a clean cuisine tray with his head. Almost there. He needed to stand to reach the knife drawer. Will forced himself upright in his dream, but was unable to find the drawer as the counter transformed into a featureless slab stretching endlessly before him. In the darkness, the eyes appeared, red and glowing. First one set, then dozens. He whipped his head around. "Mom!" Will Kwan bolted upright in bed. His heart pounded in his chest, and he was coated in sweat. Where am I? He looked around and took a few deep breaths. Just the foster place. Will snaked his arm between the mattresses and springs, groping for the knife he'd stashed there. Crud. I thought this time would be different. I slept okay a few nights, 2 nights without the nightmares. Dang it. He rubbed his eyes with his palm and clutched the knife in his other hand. At this point, he might as well go pee. Will pulled on his jeans. Too soon to be walking around the Foster house in my boxers. He'd been there a couple of months. The house is safe. I'm safe. He whispered the mantra, fervently wanting to believe it. Still, the nightmare gnawed away at the certainty, and he picked up the knife again as he stepped into the darkened hallway. Will, are you okay? He turned and saw his foster mom coming down the hall in her faded pink house robe. I heard. Her hand flew to her mouth. What are... She began backing away, staring wide-eyed at the 9-inch butcher knife in his hand. No, it's okay. It's not what it seems. Bert! Bert! She screamed for her husband. Will turned and bolted down the hall, not even stopping to pick up his shoes. He spun the deadbolt on the front door and was sprinting down the sidewalk as lights came on and raised voices trailed after him. 100 yards later, he was at the entrance to the cul-de-sac. He stopped. What now? Where was he going? He turned left toward the bayou. I must look like a criminal running down the street in the middle of the night with this big-ass knife. A weapon he had picked up for protection was now a liability. Don't think I'm going to be sleeping anymore tonight. He ducked into a yard and buried the knife in the mulch of an azalea bed. As he brushed the slivers of bark from his hands, he heard the first sirens. I need to keep moving. He'd stick out on the deserted suburban streets. Don't run, you'll look suspicious. Will settled into a brisk walk and rubbed his hands on his jeans. The sirens were getting closer. Nothing to see here, officer, he whispered. Not the droids you're looking for. Will glanced over his shoulder and saw the red and blue lights reflecting off the oak trees that lined the street leading to the subdivision. Another 20 yards and he'd be able to cut into the bayou. Fear overcame caution. He bolted, turned left again at the end of the street, and was cloaked by the gloom that surrounded the bayou. The darkness that haunted his sleep was now his ally. But the grass and dirt footpath were slick from the afternoon's rain, and he slipped and landed on his right elbow and hip. Dang it, he whispered. Electric pain reverberated up and down his arm. The siren stopped. Must be at the house. He wanted to peek around the corner. No, don't blow it now. He stood and carefully trod down the inky path, his bare feet occasionally squishing in a muddy spot on the trail. I'm leaving footprints. Nobody walks out here barefoot, except for runaway kids whose foster parents think they're going to murder them in the night. A few hundred yards later, he crept down the bank toward the water, easing down the concrete culvert where 2 branches of Houston's primary drainage system came together on their meandering path to the Gulf of Mexico. In movies, escaping prisoners always walked in the stream to break their trail. So Will did that until he remembered about water moccasins. Then he scrambled up the bank on the opposite side of his neighborhood and ducked into the woods. He picked his way deeper until he was out of sight of the bayou. Twigs and rocks stabbed at feet tenderized by running down the sidewalk. He sat on a log to wait. For 3 hours, he swatted at mosquitoes and other bugs with a taste for human flesh. By the time it was light enough to distinguish colors, he decided to go back. I think that's about 5 minutes.
Wow. I felt like I was there.
Well, good. Thanks for that opportunity. I've never read aloud from my book before, except to myself.
I was totally enthralled, and you did exactly what all the professional people tell us authors. That first sentence has to be the hook, and I was just immediately there. So read that first sentence again so people can hear your hook. I love it.
Sure. They came for him at night, in his sleep. They always did.
See, that gets you right there. Like, who came at night?
Yes.
Why was it nighttime? I want to know more. Sorry, Pat, I get excited.
I think I lost you all there for a moment.
Yes, you were frozen for a second, but no, it's you definitely hooked us in. And when you've just finished reading, I was like, oh, I want him to keep going.
Yeah.
I think it's so important for authors to read their work because it's different than picking up a book, right? It's when you hear the words from the person who created them.
Yeah, I've just gone through this whole thing about should I read the book myself for the audio book, or should I hire someone else? And at the end of the day, I think my fear of gooning it up got the better of me, and I ended up paying a professional to take that pressure off me.
I can understand that because you have to then go and edit it. And so I've always heard the secret is that you need to make sure it's just like in singing, you don't go to a concert unless you know almost 99.9% of the time that first note is going to be perfect, right? And it's the same with reading your stories, especially if you have different voices. If you have different voices, then all of a sudden grandma sounds like she's a little kid, doesn't quite work. So,
Yeah.
so I can understand
and
that.
I think also the sound quality has to be so perfect, and each page is its own file. Isn't that right?
I don't know if it's a file per page. All I know is that Freddie Cruz, who's going to read it for me, has his own professional setup, and he's been doing voice stuff for 25 years. So I'm entrusting him to bring this home for us.
And I'm reading about him. So sorry, Dr. Jacalyn. Yeah, he's good.
Oh, good. And I'm sorry, Dr. Jacalyn, I missed your question.
When will the audio copy be available?
It should be ready by Christmas, maybe a little sooner. The process of him reading it and then me listening and pointing out corrections, like what is the girl's name? How's it pronounced? Is it Shakri? Is it Shakri? And getting all that squared away is going to take a little bit of time.
Well, it sounds like you might make it for the holiday rush.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping, because that's when book 2 is coming out.
Ooh, tell us more.
That's exciting.
Yeah. Book 2 is a follow-on to Spark, and I'm tentatively calling it Fire for a couple of reasons. But it picks up where book 1 leaves off, which kind of surprised me. When I wrote Spark, I thought this was going to be a one and done book. And it wasn't until I was writing the last page that I realized, oh, there's way more to this story than I need to write. And so, DIANN, I'm sure you know, and Dr. Jacalyn, you too, sometimes you get these ideas stuck in your head, and the only way to stop that internal reverberation is to get them out on a page. And so I started writing, and now that second book's done, and book 3 is underway.
That is great. I love the title, Fire.
Yeah.
But you said something a moment that I meant to tell you that I love, to how everyone has their own avatar name. That's so cool. I'd like to know what my avatar name is. I have to give it some thought. How do you decide that?
Oh, have you ever been to a Dave & Buster's?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And sometimes you go play these games where you have to put your own avatar name or call sign up there. And I thought, I'm going to be Viper. And so I tell the guy, okay, I'm going to be Viper. And he looks at me and says, dude, everybody's Viper.
And I was thinking that was such a cool name.
Yeah, so did I. So you got to come up with something else.
I'll give this some thought.
Yeah.
Pat, any tips that you can share with our audience, people who are wanting to write, they're going to write, they started writing, and they just let it go by the wayside, but they're newly inspired?
Okay. I think the thing that helped me the most was, I'm not sure who said it. It might have been Neil Strauss. It might have been somebody else. But they said, write your first draft fast, bad, and wrong. Because you want to get that first draft out. And then hopefully no one will ever see that first draft. But just get it out. Because for me anyway, it turns out to be way easier to revise when I'm looking at words that I've already put on a page than it is to stare at a blank screen and start writing. So fast, bad, and wrong.
I love
I like
that.
it. It's excellent. Thank you. Diane, anything you want to add to that?
Well, I was just thinking, I wish my English teachers in high school would have said something like that, because I was the girl who stared at a blank sheet of paper and looked around and everybody's writing. And I had super long hair and I just start crying because I was like, why aren't the words coming to me? But that is brilliant what you just shared. I love it.
Well, thanks. Yeah, you fix all that stuff in revisions.
Absolutely. And it took a long time to learn it. You know,
Yeah.
you have to, if someone has turned you off to thinking that you can't do something and you looked up to them so much, it takes a while to dehypnotize yourself and rewire that you can. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And I think you need to bolster your ego a little bit going into the whole process, because people are going to tell you, well, some people will only say, yeah, it's great. Love it. Yeah. And that's like the feedback your mom would give you.
Yeah, exactly.
What you want is people that are going to tell you the truth, which is often a lot harder and more painful to hear. But you have to thank them for it. You have to be willing to accept that feedback. Otherwise, you're not going to get better.
That's true. And that's good advice in lots of areas, whether it's on stage, singing. You know, it's like, no, I was really, really good. And I'm like, no, honey, you were a little flat.
Well, I think
I'll go back to you. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Dr.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
When you were reading, and it was just I was so into it, but also my teacher brain is clicking in. I'm like, ooh, that's a good vocabulary word. I'm going back to curriculum. I mean, it's such a good book for imagination, but also for kids to improve their own learning. So I just really commend you, because it hits all the areas that I see as a classroom teacher. So.
Awesome. Thank you.
Diane, I just want to add on to that, because I was doing the same thing. I've always been intrigued by big words. My father would say, the bigger the word, the smarter you are. And of course, I was told in my corporate career to take it to a Twitter feed, whatever you're. But when I was listening to it, I was like, oh, that's a $2 word. That's another the $2 like it special, right? $2 bill. And I thought, yeah, he's got all these great $2 words, and I can envision myself being there in this scenario. I just thought, this is a winner.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you.
So are you on Amazon? How can people get your book?
Yep. Amazon.com. Well, yeah, everyone knows the .com now, right? Yeah. On Amazon. One word of caution, though. If you just Google Spark, then turns out there's a couple other books out there titled Spark. So Google Spark by Pat Daly and you'll find it. If it doesn't lead you to the Shark Pet Vacuum by mistake.
And your website is the Pat Daly, THE.
Yep, the Pat Daly,
DAILY.
Yeah, and I was just going to go for patdaily.com, but it turns out that somebody already had that, so
That
trying to figure out.
happens.
Yeah, what about a .net or a .co or something? And again, Mickey said, no, everybody's going to assume .com. Make it a .com. Make it thepatdaily.com, and we're done. Okay.
And besides, there's something about that article, the Pat Daly.
Yes. Introducing the Pat Daly. Introducing Pat Daly.
And the no.
Right.
The
Stick with
one
that.
and only.
substitutes.
That's right.
That's right. Absolutely. Well, I see we are over our show, so we have to sign off. We have another show coming up. But Pat, I really enjoyed meeting you.
Dr. Jacalyn, it's been a blast, and thanks so much for having me on the show. And Diane, so great to meet you as well.
Same here. I hope you'll come back. I want to hear fire.
Yes. And Pat, you're welcome to come on any of our other shows. We have 26 shows a week, and they're all different topics. So just go over to our website, usaglobaltv.com, and book your session for whatever program aligns with you.
All right, I'll do that.
All right. Thank you again. I love the reading. I think any future interviews you do with anyone, read that book.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much.
Enjoy
Take
the
care.
heat of Houston.
Bye for now.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
It's
I
hot
really,
here in Houston right now.
I
Dr.
heard it's like
Jacalyn.
people are just melting, right?
Yes, I'm so glad I'm in Virginia.
I'm glad you're in Virginia too. I'm in New Jersey. It's very dreary today.
Oh, is it? But
Yeah,
it's
but
cooler, right?
I haven't been out. I'm telling you, I'm
Oh, yeah,
behind this
that's
green
right.
screen. I was in for 3 days. I actually went out, I think 2 days ago, but I'll be getting out today. But anyway, I really enjoyed meeting him. You know, we
It was
interview
great.
so many people. He's a genuine, authentic, nice person. I just get that feeling from him.
I agree. And I think you have to be able to write a book like that, to take someone and have them go into such a wonderful world. And I really think kids are going to love this book as well as adults, because everyone's into what's virtual reality. How can I be a part of it? And here's a great way to begin. That's what I think. Anyway, I
Yeah,
can't
I
wait to
agree
get a
with you.
hold of it. So
I agree with you, Diane. And Diane, I just wanted to share something I had mentioned before backstage, and I have you on spotlight just because you deserve the spotlight. But I was reading one of your books, Harry the Camel, to my great niece, and it was so
oh,
touching to know that you had written it and that how beautiful it is. That I think even though we're out of time, I do want to play your clip because I think it's something that people really need to see. So take a look at DIANN FLOYD BOEHM and some of the work she's created. This is actually out of date, I have to say, because there's so much more you've created since then. But let's take a look.
Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to Story Garden. Your host, DIANN BOEHM. I'm so happy to have you here today.
DIANN FLOYD BOEHM tells wonderful stories that warm the heart, spark the imagination, and unite people and families across generations. For children, Diane's Harry the Camel connects with all of us who've ever wondered how different our lives might have been if only we'd been born something better, like a wonderful horse instead of an ordinary camel. In the end, we all learn along with Harry that there's nothing better than just being yourself. Diane's little girl in the moon looks down on earthbound children and wonders if they know she's just like them. A story of love, home, and the bond between mother and daughter, its powerful theme that we're each of us different yet all of us the same plants a seed in children that promises to blossom within a loving and trusting grown-up. Diane's new biography, Rise, recounts the experiences of her grandmother, Ruby, to reveal the hidden strength of the human spirit. Ruby's story inspires all of us to become the best versions of ourselves. You'll find all of Diane's delightful books and much more at DIANNFLOYDBOEHM.com. Visit DIANNFLOYDBOEHM.com. That's DIANNFLOYDBOEHM.com.
you know, I never tire of seeing these because I sit there and go, I can't believe it took so long for this dream to come true. So thank you.
It's incredible. And I have to say, Diane, that I noticed on there when I gave my testimonial, it was from Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn, which doesn't exist anymore. So we should ask Al to make some updates and maybe put your new books in at the either front or the back of that.
Actually, I need to talk to you about that because I have 2 new ones coming out. So we'll put that on your extremely busy schedule. And thank you, Dr. Jacalyn, for providing such a wonderful show for everyone to see.
Thank you, Diane. I appreciate it. I'm going to spotlight you again. If you can just give your contact information for our audience who wants to reach out to you, who should reach out to you, and how do they do it?
Everyone who loves to read books. So children's books and my young adult book that you just saw. And you may reach me at DIANNFLOYD, B as in boy, OEHM.com. Thank you, Dr. Jacalyn.
Thank you so much, Diane. I appreciate it. And thanks again for taking us with you while you're traveling. I really appreciate that as well.
You're welcome. We'll see you next week. And no telling where I'll be. It's like, where's Waldo? Where's Diane?
Where's Diane? All right. Thank you, Diane. Enjoy yourself.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye. All right, folks, as we close out this show, I know my next guest is waiting in the other studio for the film and music show. I just want to share two things with you. So this is my new book that's coming out. It's The Amazing Adventures of Lady Ella, the Listening Mentor. And I'm co-writing this with Mariska Dupree. She's over in New Zealand. And this is the first of 7 books that we are publishing. And what's interesting, I think, about this book is all the animal characters you see on the book cover represent real people who are certified elevated listeners. So if you watched my sponsorship about elevated listening, these are people who are elevated listeners, and each of their animal characters has special qualities as a listener. Diann Floyd BOEHM is the gazelle here in the front. So stay tuned for that. That's coming out around Christmas time. Actually, it's Thanksgiving time. I want to make it for Black Friday. Okay, we are leaving for now. Please stay wherever you are. We will be back on the film and music show with my co-host, Madeline Chan, joining us from the UK, and our special guest. Bye for now. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Diann.